Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to the January 9th, 2024 Winchester Planning Board meeting. We are being recorded over Zoom and whoops, what happened to WinCam? WinCam, are you here today?
Doesn't look like it.
It doesn't look like it. Well, we will pass this recording on to WinCam so they have it. So if you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video and your audio. We have a quorum tonight, so why don't we go through and do a roll call vote? Sally Dale.
Present.
I Ching Scott.
Present.
Nick Rosettos.
Present.
Carrie Layton. You've got to say it by voice, please. You are somehow still muted.
There we go. Present.
Thank you. We are also joined by Nancy Polcari, our recording secretary, Matt Schumann, our town engineer, our town planner, of course, Taylor Herman, and it looks like a cast of thousands. So we have on our agenda this evening a continued public hearing on the Waterfield special permit petition CBD number 118. We have hopefully a pretty quick review for a project in the CBD, a Tabola. Taylor, was our student presentation, were they able to pull that together?
I was told that they'll be here, so I don't know if anyone, maybe we'll see.
Okay, you can give us an update on what that actually means. At 8:30, we will then start discussing overlay districts for the MBTA 3A compliance zoning. Taylor, can I turn it over to you? Do you have any updates you want to tell us about, like our new co-op student?
Yeah, absolutely. So started yesterday, Griffin, our new co-op student from Northeastern, started. It's going to be really great to have the extra capacity, especially with MBTA 3A. Sally actually stopped by and saw all the work that he's done already. So it's going to be really good. Please stop by just to say hi. The only thing is Griffin will not be in the office or in town hall on Tuesdays. I didn't know that till today, but he will not be here on Tuesday as he has class. So, and I believe that I sent out his email. Feel free to reach out to him, ask him. He's here full time. So even though he's not here on Tuesdays, he's still working remotely. So 35 hours a week. And we'll be looking to fill those 35 hours. So feel free to give suggestions or reach out. I think that's the only update I have.
Okay. Any other updates from the rest of the board? Okay. I don't have any updates. We don't have any minutes. So our next agenda item is in 8 minutes, where we talk about continued public hearing for Waterfield. So we do have to find something to fill the next 7 minutes of dead air time. Did anyone go on any great vacations over the
Maybe we can have an update on the housing production plan. I don't think
I can give an update on the housing production plan, which is there is no update. So Beth and I are working on coordinating several different outreach outreach to several different types of groups. One is local developers and real estate agents and people in the real estate field to understand what their perspective is on housing production in Winchester. And the other is people who have been affected either positively or negatively about housing in Winchester. That's the more interesting one. So that's going to be people who live in an affordable unit already, or people who have been on the list for affordable unit for a long time, or people who are opposed to affordable housing in general. Those are the types of people who we want to speak with for that type of thing. That process needs to go very quickly by the end of February, I believe. So we're in a very, very tight timeline to get that done. But yeah, that's really all that we have for right now. Unless you have any specific questions, maybe hopefully I can try to answer them.
Right. I think, I don't know if we had a review of the last meeting with this group, but did we have, because I know Dia, Taylor and myself were present at the housing production plan, but sort of the plan and, you know, the next steps with the MAPC consultant, that kind of stuff.
Were you looking for an overview of that, or?
Yeah, I can't remember if we updated this group, the planning board, on that.
Oh, I can't either. Does that strike a?
I don't believe that we did.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a pretty big meeting. It was kind of a kickoff meeting with a lot of people present, and pretty exciting that we have a consultant on board, and it's going forward, and we're sort of like revisiting the last plan, which is more than 5 years ago. Is that correct? And just seeing how to go forward.
Yeah, I believe there was the town manager has put together a fairly large working group that I-Ching and I and Taylor are part of, with a large number of people from the community and from other boards. And that the meeting that we attended was led by the MAPC person who has been contracted by the town to put together our next housing production plan. And one of the major components of the discussion was what was in the old plan, and where we were with respect to the goals of the old plan and what needed to be updated in order to essentially move ahead. So there was a pretty in-depth discussion from a number of players as to where they thought we were, what progress we've made. We have made some progress, and what more, how we would enable the town to create on the order of 40 or so affordable units per year, which is essentially what we need to maintain a status quo. It doesn't actually move us that much forward on the needle, but it does allow us to enter safe harbor, because we would be making some progress towards our 10% goal. So there's a number of obstacles that we have before us in terms of what land how do we understand what the current zoning, the obstacles of the current zoning, for instance, to increasing the amount of housing, what the market plays in that, some of the difficulties with getting to affordable units versus market rate units, and the economics of that, and how do you incentivize developers to provide affordable units. So it's a fairly complicated ball of string that we're trying to unwrap. I don't know if that was enough detail, I Ching, but
Yeah,
that's
no,
what I
I
got.
think it's very important for this board to understand the complexity of it and to also know that we're really looking for ideas and how to achieve this, and how to get to that 10%, how to keep our safe harbor, well, we don't have it actually. How do we gain our safe harbor, and what we need to do for that, because it's a pretty intense work ahead of us in order to do all of that stuff. And we need to keep it, I think, on the front burner, when we think about all these things that we're working on.
So, I Ching, when you say that the working group is looking for ideas on how to achieve the goal being an environment in which 40 additional affordable housing units are brought online every year. Is that the benchmark?
I think that's one goal. And then how do we keep moving that percentage up from what was below 2% just several years ago to now, a little less than 5? How do we get to that 10 where we are actually, providing enough housing and affordability to residents and the public? So yeah, those are all humongous challenges. And I think that we are looking at other towns have done it within Massachusetts, within, the nation, and how, we can keep going with that battle.
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I don't recall where this person was from, but she pointed out that even if we meet our 10% goal, I mean, we still need to, in perpetuity, bring online around 40 units a year just to keep up with the population, et cetera, and the number of units in town. So we can't just expect that we get to 10% and everything stops.
Right.
Because that's, we do have to think about how we do sustainable growth. And keep in mind that most of the reason that we have moved way up from the 1.6% we were a few years ago is because we have 2 large 40Bs that have come online. And so, between them, they have, around 200 and some units, 240 some units. And that's a huge increase. But, it's a question for the town. Is that how we're going to solve our affordable housing, is by putting in lots and lots of large, there's a limited amount of land where you can put in large structures. So how in the long run do we deal with this issue?
I would be interested to hear the results of the research on how strategies that other towns have successfully employed to increase the production of housing in their towns.
Right. Like some of the celebrations from this meetings was that we pointed out some of the public-private partnerships, including Waterfield and Washington, Swanton, and Cross Street, as ways that we can incrementally start to get more control, and not succumb to the multiple 40Bs, but be able to work with developers in getting these things built.
Right.
Yeah. So those are some of the really great creative ways that we've done it since the last plan.
Okay. So it occurs to me that the recommendations or the visualizations of lot aggregation exercises that we've gone through on the northern end of Main Street, that those would add to the momentum just by suggestion. Is that true? That developers would see the opportunities presented there, especially when the zoning is more amenable to it.
If we can produce, if the construction incentivizes affordable units, at least at the 10% level, that would keep us, sort of status quo.
Okay.
And then to eat away at our 10%, towards our 10%, we would need to increase towards the 10% SHI. we would need to incentivize units which are higher than just a 10% minimum for that project. So that's the complex sort of thing we have to play with. Carrie, somewhere you had your hand up. You disappeared again. And then we do have our hearing to start. So there you are, Carrie, with your hand up. Do you?
There we
She
go.
may
I'm
not-
sorry, I'm not
okay.
able to unmute myself this evening, so I may have to lean on
I
that.
just need to make you a co-host. Hold on.
Okay, great.
But you can go ahead.
So I feel like this is the sort of thing, we've got this nice audience this evening, and I just want to make sure that we are being clear about whether the planned housing at Swanton and Washington Street and the Waterfield development count as part of the almost 5% or the reach towards the 10%. I don't know if I know that off the top of my head. And I'm trying to make sure I know which best living document to track. I know the housing production plan site on the town page, but
So the official numbers actually come from the state, and
Okay.
they're a little out of date. For instance, they don't show one of the 40Bs. I forget whether it's a River or Cambridge on there, and we're working with them to clear that up. The Washington and Swanton and the Waterfield lots would only count when they have gone through the permitting process, I believe. So at the moment, they do not count. And I'm a little fuzzy as to which state of the permitting process. But until they go through until they get a stamp of approval from the town to proceed, they don't count at all. So
yeah, so we have some nice progress coming,
yeah,
but I mean, not to diminish the ongoing plan, but
we are definitely making progress. So speaking of Waterfield, why don't we open up our hearing on the Waterfield CBD petition number 18, and if I could get a motion to open that hearing, please.
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Seconded.
And let's do a roll call vote. I Ching Scott,
aye.
Sally Dale,
I,
Nick Rosettos,
Aye.
Carrie Layton,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. Well, Diabjurius, I say aye. There we go. So we have with us a large number of people, from Civico Causeway, and also I believe Dennis is here. Is Dennis here?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, there's so many people, I have to switch between screens here. So this evening we're going to hear we're going to get a design peer review from our consultant, Dennis Carlone. And we're going to ask for some public comment at the end of that, as we do at each of these hearings. And then if there is a time for interaction with Civico Causeway, we can put that in as well. So Taylor, why don't I hand this off to you and Dennis?
Thank you, Diab. So for everyone to bring everyone up to speed, Dennis Carlone is helping us out with the design peer review for the Waterfield project. Over the last few weeks, Dennis has looked at it thoroughly, and Dennis and I have met to go over some of the information which he has presented. And I know that he's eager to present it to the board and to the developers. Dennis, without further ado, I think I can just allow you to speak. I don't know if you have anything to present. You don't need to present anything if you don't want. You can just speak, but you can speak both to the board and to the developers, and you should have the ability to unmute.
Thank you, Taylor, and it's good to be with everybody. We have not met with I have not met with the development team yet, and I'm sure they're wondering, oh my God, what is this fellow going to say? So I want to say right off from the start, and some of you know this, I've worked on a lot of projects, design-wise, design review, and the basic bones of the proposal are very town design oriented. And I am optimistic before I go over a list of issues that Taylor and I will talk with the development team about. I think there are relatively easy solutions to all of them. At the same time, I'm fully aware that certain costs have been added to this project, the parking level, and there are certain issues with the site that are unique, which are going to add costs. So my comments will try to be proactive throughout on how best to get the project to work given the standards, design standards that the town has approved back in 2016, as well as make a very viable project. So Taylor, I can go through the list if you think, or I can just talk off of the top of my head on it. I need a little direction about how much detail, given that it's preliminary design, not fully detailed as far as landscape. And there's still some questions I have. How do you suggest I proceed?
Yeah, so just for the board and everyone else to know is that this is a preliminary review. The final design review will be submitted hopefully by the 23rd. And we will review everything together, all the peer reviews together at one time. Dennis, I think that the best, and Dia, please jump in if you disagree, but I think that feel free to go line item by line item, but you don't need to be, overly specific because we will be reviewing this again in 2 weeks.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to I didn't want to overdo it. I know you all know, especially the development team, which has looked at this in great detail, this is a complicated site. It's an unusual site. Part of it is hidden from the public, and yet part of it will be very public. The MBTA station courtyard, I call it, for lack of a better definition. The flooding issue, the MWRA easement. The preliminary design, as I alluded to, is good. It's intelligent. And everybody knows that further refinement will happen in the normal process. And I see part of our public involvement is to help the team put it in the right direction. And I have no doubt, having looked up the firms, that will happen. The fire department, as you all know, and I only recently learned, had requirements which the development team has incorporated. I've made some assumptions that the zoning review is by the town building department. I know building height and setbacks are part of the issues, getting approval for that. I don't know what else yet, if there are other issues to be looked at. And then comments from the planning board, design review committee, engineering, on, affordable housing committee, even the MBTA, I am not fully aware of. So I'm basing this on the 2016 town center design standards. And obviously, no project satisfies every standard or guideline 100%. You're looking at the whole picture, and the goal is to encourage and make the final product fit in as well as possible. And I truly believe we're going in the right direction. What is needed is site design refinement, landscape design, including contours, has not been presented yet. I understand that. I wrote down town goals in my initial document here. And if I'm missing anything, planning board, Taylor, please let me know. I said new development should build on and strengthen the best of the town center's character. That doesn't mean duplicating any one building. I think the frontage on Waterfield Road does that to a large degree. And I know the architects have built a similar aesthetic elsewhere, so they know what they're doing. Expand affordable housing numbers and housing in general downtown. Obvious, and I Ching mentioned that. By the way, I've been very involved in affordable housing in Cambridge. And as a city councilor, I just retired after 5 terms, and I've advocated for the city to aggressively buy land and doing an analysis first of likely sites that make sense for whatever reason. But that's an aside. The town has to take a very active role in this environment. Make greater use of underutilized sites in the town center. That's a town goal, but it's coincided with the affordable housing comments. Create handsome, safe town entry at the MBTA station. This site, as I'll talk about a little later, it's complicated, as I said earlier, but that's a great opportunity. It includes a public entry to the MBTA. And yet I believe it's going to be conveyed as private land. I'm not sure of that, or if there's an easement or what. But these kinds of spaces are really what make a town feel like something special. And how do you do that? Who maintains it? Who has police jurisdiction? I know the MBTA property line, I worked with them years ago on the site, is actually very little. It's mostly the Waterfield lot. And there's some issues there that need to be worked out, and perhaps the development team has already started. And then I added maximize green development tools to prevent flooding. We all know how Waterfield got its name initially, and this is a site that will be affected by flooding, and good design will incorporate all that. So I mentioned what I call the MBTA entry courtyard versus private alley. And so one of the things I would convey is, in some ways, this will feel like public space in many ways. And perhaps there's a 5-mile-per-hour zone from the curb of Waterfield Road into the site. And if you're entering a garage, you're not going to go faster than that anyway. But there are going to be people in this, for lack of a better word, roadway. And I think we have to approach that. As a town and urban design architect, I'm always thinking of that. It seems to me that this will especially read as a public way unless it clearly has a gateway expression. And what I mean by that is I've done gate posts, if you will. I'm not talking about that, but some expression of clearly stating what this is. I'm not sure what it is yet, the alley MBTA courtyard. The setback at Waterfield Road for the building, I understand why that happened, but it's created in the front this potential landscape area, paved area. What is it? Is it public? I think it's private. And how you denote that, again, is an issue that the planning board has to think about. I imagine in my head how to do that, but I'd rather talk with Taylor and the architects and hear their thoughts before I say more about that. But it is, again, one of these interesting places that public-private, and it enhances potentially, especially without the retail there, enhances this entry point to the T. So I'm looking at it broadly beyond just a private development, which I fully support. A thing that might not have been discussed and gets back to the landscaping in this alley courtyard next to the T station is softening the impacts that will be created by the MBTA, or that are there now, vibration and sound, and how that's done both architecturally with windows or whatever, or as much planting as possible. And I realize what we're seeing is the minimum number of required parking spaces. So this is going to be interesting. On the building design, there are always questions about materials, the kind of brick. Is it thin brick? Is it full brick? How much is brick? The concrete garage treatment, I understand the reasons why. However, facing the courtyard, the MBTA entry, I think it's inappropriate. And obviously, the team will have a lot of discussions about that. And even facing the outer properties, other elevations, how can it be treated? The least costly way is staining it. 1920s storefronts that have concrete columns and lintels are all stained. And I've reworked some of those buildings using those stains. There's a beautiful limestone, but that could get dirty. Brownstone, all brownstone was stained. I don't know if you know that, but brownstone staining might be the most appropriate. But again, I'm talking off the top of my mind with the architects and developer, and they're going to lead these efforts. I'm throwing out possibilities. Overall, the facade embellishment, where the concrete clapboard is, it's very undifferentiated. And even though it faces the back of buildings on Church Street and what I call the forest to the south, there can be a little more articulation needed. And I looked at the main building entry point elevation, which combines the second and third floor window trim. Maybe that's what happens in select areas, even within the concrete clapboard sections, which are rather large. And we have to remember in the winter, trees lose their leaves. And it's a bigger building. This is not a big cost. It'd be still made out of the trim, same trim work as used elsewhere. The question of all colors and finishes, I'll get to that later. Lighting, there's private lighting, obviously, but should the courtyard alleyway be public lighting as a public entry point? These are all questions that need to be addressed. I know I'm going into some detail, but I'd rather do that in the first meeting, and then we'll check some off, cross some out. The garage door, will it be open the whole time? Will it be closed? Well, obviously it needs to be maintained. And then signage. So almost done here. Specific exterior elevation comments. the Waterfield Road frontage. I wrote down handsome traditional facade. In the guidelines, we talked about public frontage, that the base under windowsills or at the column base, that it should be granite or something that's very durable. And I'm not saying along the whole edge of the courtyard at all. I'm just saying at that most focal point. Rangeley Woods elevation, that's the woods to the south. I mentioned the greater articulation is needed and to soften the parking wall. The MBTA entry courtyard, that's the southern facade that has the parking and an entry. I worked on the National Gallery of Art long time ago, 50 years ago. And I worked on the concrete. And I know good concrete is 3 times the cost of probably what's being proposed here. And even good concrete looks not particularly great over time. I know a number of buildings that have been stained because the concrete weathered poorly. I personally believe that that portion of the garage should be brick faced, connecting the 2 pieces of the apartment building above. I know that's a cost issue, and we'll talk about that. Well, I won't mention that now. So follow through to come. To do good design review, you check in as often as the architect's request of any changes, and there'll be changes to this preliminary design, but a formal submission of 90% design development, the building of a materials test wall on site, and we'll talk at that time what should be incorporated. It's not a big wall, but it's all the interesting conditions. And any architect would want this ideally, but given the town review and the size of the building next to the buildings that are there, the planning board will want this as well. There might be 2 possible bricks types that the architects want to look at before the decision is made. So it's good for the architectural team as well. Might have 2 color trims. All those kinds of permutations can be looked at. Discussions of changes during bidding. It's inevitable, there might be something. And then a final approval sign off when the building is complete. So it sounds like a long list, but it's just obvious things. I mentioned when I saw Diab, Sally, and Taylor at a meeting that the town is lucky to have this proposal. I don't always say that, but it's true. I don't know the architects. I don't know the development team, but I wanted to be clear that it's a great start, and it really is in refinement, and again, making it a good background building, and to cut down on the appearance of the mass as much as possible. And they're already on their way with different planes of facades, slightly different planes. It might be help with paint or maybe not, but those are the things we'll discuss. And I'm open to any comments or questions from anyone.
Okay, thank you,
Or
Dennis.
no one.
So why don't we first open this up to the board? Do you have any questions of Dennis?
Dennis, I really appreciate your comments, and I find it very helpful to think about the alleyway and the front facade, and its recession of the streetscape. how that might be interpreted one way or the other. How maybe the development team wants to see it as a private space, or to introduce some kind of porosity for the public to interact with it, and especially since there will be public parking within the site, that will be a really interesting thing to articulate, and opportunity to make a space that feels welcoming and yet sort of protective of the residents in some ways. So I find that a really it would be an interesting design challenge. I look forward to seeing how the development team interprets that. I really appreciate that thought, because the loss of the retail is one thing, interacting with the facade, but the public parking remains a priority for the town. So that's interesting to me.
May I respond, Diab?
Sure.
Thank you for that and that comment. I didn't write this down, but there are very few apartment windows that literally look out second, third floor to this MBTA station and alleyway. I'm not suggesting we change that. There might be a way to help that. So the lighting without overlighting for obvious reasons, and perhaps some subtle changes might help that. But normally, when as many eyes on a space like that, where anybody can be there and say they're going to use the station or they're waiting for a friend. And I know Winchester is not like downtown city, but nevertheless, these are kinds of the things that you think about and look on. The original entry with the retail was on the alley, if you will. And from a security point of view, it's better where it is on the street, Waterfield Road. But it means less eyes on this. And I think there are things we can do that can promote that. But it needs to be discussed. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
We are almost out of time on this. I think we can push this along a bit. Are there any questions from the board? I see that we have a question from one of our public. Let me first see anything else from the board.
Yeah, but I just have a quick question. So Dennis, thank you for your presentation. It will be very helpful to see your comments in writing, with the idea that I can understand more about what exactly you're commending or recommending a change for, because I'm not sure I caught all of them, because it was sort of it was an introductory overview of your thinking, which is great. So what will be your next product? Is it a written letter, or?
I think, Taylor, did you say January 23rd is the final write-up?
That is correct.
Right.
So in 2 weeks, there'll be a final write-up, but we need to meet with the development team.
That's what I was thinking.
And quite frankly, begin to form a bond that we're working together. That's my goal always, and the town's goal through Taylor and Diab. And given the design review, peer review process and board approval, we'll get there. What I just went over was literally a list of issues. And after we meet, hopefully next week, I will fill it out, and yes, you will see a draft on the 23rd.
Yeah, that's great.
Or before the 23rd, if we can do that sooner.
Right. Well, I appreciate your comments about the massing and about the first and the second and third floor windows being joined in the front building. I wasn't really clear what you were suggesting about the more use of the brick. I do recognize that you've hit on a really interesting point about the way that the site plan or the site materials work to convey public versus private space in what is essentially a privately owned public space. Because it's so adjacent to the T and it's an entry to the T. And then your comment about the gateway, you might not have seen early proposed designs from this same development team that had a sort of a porte cochere. I forget what we called it, a gatehouse. But I do believe the MBTA was quite opposed to that structure for accessibility reasons, which everybody was sad about, because we understand your point that a gateway is a good feature. And so perhaps that can be achieved on the ground plane through the use of materials and things. And I wanted to thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I'd love to see the gatehouse because I'll let you know I have a weakness for that in design, but I know we're not going there. But
Yeah, unless you want to take on the T.
I've done
Yeah.
that in the past. We could talk about that another time.
I was not inviting that.
I know.
Yeah, I just want to slide in a comment here, and that one of the reasons that we're looking at the 23rd is that we were, I mean, this is great news from Several Causeways. They've been pre-approved for the Winter 24 funding round, as long as the planning board approves by the 15th of February. And so the 23rd, if the planning board were to approve on the 23rd, that would provide enough. There's a waiting period where there are possible appeals that we would have to go through. And so that's why the 23rd has come up as sort of the key date for the project. And I don't know if someone, I'll ask for a comment from the development team. I want to get to our resident comment. So Taylor, if you could give Ellen, and Ellen Spencer is also the chair of the town's design review committee.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please, Ellen.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to say hi to Dennis. I don't think we've met in person. And I was just curious when if you were aware, it was some time ago, but if you had been made aware, the design review did at some point look at this, some preliminary plans and make some recommendations to the planning board. And I'm not sure, I'm just curious if those have been forwarded to you. We obviously will not be able to meet, we don't need to, before the 23rd, but the main gist of what we commented on, generally very favorable for the design, but really encouraging that the use of as much brick as possible on the parts of the building that will be visible. It's quite a high building, be visible from other areas in town. The thinking being that, it almost, if you used a lot of brick, and I understand there's a cost issue, you almost, even though it's a new building, one goal might be to make it kind of look like a rehabbed old mill building, and to have it fitting into the environment. So if you haven't, if you haven't seen our minutes, I'd be happy to dig them out and send them on, but just really wanted to support the use of as much brick as possible. Have you seen those notes
I-
at all?
I've been told about him. In fact, I gave the whole meeting a very brief list of needs. But if I
Yes,
spell it all out, I said comments from planning board, design
Yes.
review, engineering, ADA. So
Right, I just wasn't sure what you had actually,
no, I
if you had
haven't.
actually.
I haven't.
Comments, okay. Because we, you know, we also think this is a really important project and are really very supportive of it, but I think it'll be important. This will go a long way. If we get this right, this will go a long way towards establishing a good baseline for the future. So,
I agree.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate it. Are there any comments from any other? Why don't we jump over to Civic Oak Causeway? Joe, you have your hand up. Taylor, if you could just introduce yourself as soon as you have the ability to speak, let us know who you are and your role.
Sure. My name is Joe Haskin. I'm a principal at Union Architects. We are the lead architects on this project. And I just wanted to first thank the board and also Mr. Carlone for taking the time to review the project. I know that a peer review is oftentimes not an enviable position, but the comments and the general comments that Mr. Carlone made and the board suggested make sense. And we are also happy to hear that I like the bedside manner that Mr. Carlone presented this in and is looking forward to forming a bond. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time, and we look forward to reviewing the comments in greater depth and working together.
By all means, I look forward to it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, did I get the details correct on where the project is relative to getting the funding? I want to make sure I didn't misstate that.
Yes, yes. Sam Scopatone with Civico here, and I'm joined by some other members of the development team and the design team. Yes, you got the date right. We have a funding deadline or application deadline with the state for February 15th. And so we are looking forward to diving into these peer review comments as quickly as we can and seeing what we can do to work together. And so hopefully we can schedule a meeting with Mr. Carlone next week, and we'll work with Taylor to set that up.
Excellent. Thank you much. Is there anyone from your team who wants to comment this evening? Because I don't see any other people from our public participants who are interested, who haven't raised their hands yet. Okay. Everybody's happy. Dennis, go ahead.
It appears that the landscape design might not be available soon, or we would have it already. Can we do a design review and focusing on the building? Would that obviously is the big picture for funding? Is that sufficient, and holding off on site development and whatever? I assume we can, but I just wanted to bring it up.
So that's a question, and from my perspective, as you point out, well, Dennis, things change over time. And so what is going to come out of this board in terms of what we approve may change as things go along. So I think so I know you talked about a 90% development plan in your list, and Sam, you've got your hand up, so maybe I'll just stop talking and you can respond.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to clarify what Dennis meant by the landscape plan. Late last week, we did submit some updated plans including an updated planting plan. I don't know if you've seen them yet,
No,
but Taylor has those.
okay. There weren't many opportunities for planting on the site plan I saw. That's an issue. And I get parking's gonna win out, but well, we'll talk about that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other concerns? I don't see anyone's hand raised, so I'm going to assume that everyone is happy as a clam before they get plucked out of the water. So at this point, I think what we need to do is to schedule a the continuation of this hearing. And so I believe we've all heard that the 23rd, and I would say the 23rd at 7:30 again, unless there is an issue with anyone's calendar. I do not see any. So could I get a motion to continue the hearing on Waterfield petition CBD number 18 until January the 23rd at 7:30?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, roll call vote, please. Carrie,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
I Ching,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. Thank you all very much. Thank you so much, Dennis.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to have your insight into these projects because you always bring up something I've never thought of. And thanks to the design and development team for joining us. I hope you guys have a very fruitful couple of weeks working with Dennis, and we will see you all back in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Take care. So
Thank you very much.
That meeting would be in person, not, I just want to be clear. It's important that be in person. The team, development team, Taylor and myself.
That is up to you guys to work it out.
All right.
So I will.
I'll follow up with you, Dennis, and we'll talk about that offline.
Great. Take care, everyone.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank
And
you.
we're gonna move right into our CBD design review for A Tavola, and I apologize to the petitioners on that one. We're a bit slower today. So we have before us, I think most people remember, hopefully, we had a pre-application meeting. This is a very, very tiny change to a storefront door, I believe. And so I am going to hand this over to Taylor, if that's okay, because I have to take a brief break.
So I don't believe that the petitioner is with us tonight, and we can make this even quicker because we have an option to make to even if we even want to hear this. So design review has not reviewed this yet, and since Ellen happens to be here, I think.
Oh,
Yep, since Ellen happens to be here, we want to, we can make, here, I'll pull it up for you, Ellen, I'm not asking you to make any decision on the behalf of your board right now.
I think we saw something.
For
in a
34
recent,
Church?
Yeah.
Okay, let me pull it up. Does this look familiar to you?
Yes.
It's the change of this front door.
Mm-hmm. I think we did. We didn't see these actual pictures, but maybe we saw a pre-application or something. It seemed like a very minor change to us, and I can't, again, not speaking for the whole board. I don't think we had any issues with this at all.
So I'm actually going to ask you if you want. We can either hold off until your board reviews it, or if you do believe that I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. If you do believe that your board has reviewed it and has okayed it, we would like to move forward with the planning board decision. Can you see?
I think that's,
It is just the
yeah.
change of that front door and the
Right.
above
It's-
awning.
I would say, I can say pretty confidently, I think you can move ahead. I don't think anybody on my board is going to squawk on that.
Okay, thank you very much. To the members of the planning board, what we have in front of us is 34 Church Street, which on December 12th, 2024, was the planning board had approved the pre-application packet. All documentation except for the project narrative and visual plans have been waived. The project narrative is provided here. And to remind you of the changes, this is a Tavola. This is existing conditions, the above image, and future conditions, proposed conditions on the bottom. What we have is an updated door so that they can meet modern fire code, and an update of the awning to match the existing awning over the existing entrance. And those are the two changes that are being proposed.
So the decision before the board essentially is to approve the design review, in which
That is
case
correct.
this would move directly on to permitting.
So I have a question, Taylor, about your planner notes, that it refers to this as being still in CBD pre-application.
That's an error.
Oh, so it should say it's a CBD application.
That is correct. I can rectify that if you'd like.
Okay, but so given that, Diab, what did you just say again? Because I was getting confused by the pre.
So there was a pre-application in order to get the waivers from some of the requirements in our zoning bylaw. Then, given that we accepted a large number of the waivers, they then put together an actual application. And now we are doing that. Now that it's an official application, we have the obligation to approve or disapprove of this application. And then once we're done with that process, if we approve it, they can then go to the building department and get a permit and start construction.
Right.
So
So we heard from historical and they have no issues with it. Design review doesn't seem to have any issues with it. And we looked at it in pre-application and saw that, I think we discussed that it would be better for the street front, and that, I mean, it makes the restaurant more accessible, and changes the architecture that way, makes it more safe for people in there. The only issue I have is with the renderings here. It looks like for the changes, it almost looks like the hinges on the left, but really in the plan, they just don't have the handlebar. So it's a door that swings this way, right? Like if you're from the street. I forget if that's
there
right
will
or
be a
left.
handlebar there.
Right. So it's just missing that, and I was a little bit confused. But other than that, I think it's totally fine. I would make a motion to approve this design review.
okay, is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Excellent. Any further discussion?
So I have a comment just to clarify what Yi-Ching was talking about with the building, with the door swing. And the reason that the door has like a 1/3, 2/3 vertical division, is that because it's like a folding door, or that's?
No, it's an ADA accessibility. So somebody who is in a wheelchair has space to maneuver and be able to enter. I think it has to be like a foot to the left.
I see.
Of the door.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's helpful. Right, and I see that, let's see, the drawings aren't labeled, it just says pricing. All right, well, I looked at the drawings, but I didn't digest the fine points as you did, Yi-Ching. So Seems fine.
Okay, are we ready for a vote? If so, let's do a roll call vote, please. Carrie,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
I Ching,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. Thank you all very much. Let us move on. Only 13 minutes behind now.
Can I just
To
say, do you have just in
Yeah.
case, Ellen, if anything does come up, I have 24 hours to submit this. So just let me know if you happen to come across anything that you take issue with.
Okay. No problem, thanks.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Dia.
Well, actually, I'm going to bounce it right back to you, Taylor, because we are at the Winchester High School student presentation part, and I don't recognize anyone here. So
So tonight we have a few members of the Winchester High School come to give a presentation on affordable housing in Winchester. I've met with them individually on one occasion, and I've gone to their classroom to teach about affordable housing, activism in town in local Massachusetts towns and other stuff. So we're pleased to have them have their presentation. Everyone who wants to present, can you please raise your hand so that I can give you permission to? And we will, you can share your screen and you can get going.
So while that's all being set up, I want to thank you folks for coming before us and doing this. This is really excellent. And so I'm really thrilled that you're coming before us for this.
And you should be able to unmute as well.
And maybe just if you could all introduce yourselves, that would be great.
Hi, we're like doing a project on affordable housing in Winchester. My name is Isabella Castro. The other members are Carson, Selena, and Grady. So basically, we are we are enrolled in a class called Active Citizenship, and we were assigned a project to research on, and we chose affordable housing, which is what we're passionate on, and this is us. So our goal is to spread awareness so that more people become aware of this issue in our community. And we also want to motivate people to care about this issue because later on we're gonna show a survey that we did in which not that many people actually show any interest in affordable housing currently. And we just want to basically bring this issue to attention because it is really important and yeah. So some of the reasons why we believe people should invest in affordable housing is because it brings racial diversity, creating a more diverse community with different perspectives, ideas, and opinions. Also because of economic growth, since it increases access to affordable housing, boosting economic growth as affordable housing is also really important in our community. And also because of families and jobs becomes as it makes people able to live closer to each other. So some of the root causes are obviously zoning, as zoning laws can limit the types of and density of housing that can be built in certain areas, restricting the supply of affordable opportunities. And also, after doing some research, we found out that 95% of the houses in Winchester are zoned for single families, which means that not that many multi-family houses are here exist in Winchester or being built, and those are usually more affordable. And another reason of those root causes is the developer, because he does not make as much money as he would by building in affordable housing, and also due to limited government funding for affordable housing initiatives, which can slow down the development of new projects for affordable housing. So this is the average housing prices. So as we can see, Winchester is really, really high. It's almost 1,000,000 and 500 compared to Massachusetts and the US, which is relatively low, being with Massachusetts only being a little bit above 500,000 and the US not even being 500,000. And then here are just some of the average housing prices in bordering towns. And then again here, Winchester, which is relatively high, almost double of other cities such as Medford, Stoneham, Burlington, and Woburn, which are all around the same range with the $15,000 and $1 million. So some of the projects in the neighboring towns, we found that Burlington has one in 4th Avenue. They're planning to create more affordable apartments, and another one in Medford in Fellsway. So after doing some research, we thought about some locations up to zone for affordable housing, and we were thinking of Main Street, that area in general. And here is just like a picture if you don't know where that is. It's like near Andreas and Parkview, so it would be this area. So here are some of the affordable housing myths which makes people not think that affordable housing is good. So, first one is affordable housing is always cheap. So, affordable housing is not actually always cheap. In reality, it's just a set at a percentage of the area median income, which means it can widely vary depending on the region. Another myth that is not true at all is that affordable housing decreases property value. Studies have shown that there is no conclusive evidence of a negative impact on property values. And then the last one is that affordable housing is only for low-income families. So there's a misconception that affordable housing is only for low-income families, but it can benefit a wide range of individuals and families with varying incomes. So the next slide is going to be by Selena. Taylor, do you mind unmuting her?
Yep, just give me one sec.
Thank you.
You should be able to unmute herself now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so during the past month, we made a poster for affordable housing, and we included a code on it so that people can scan it and they can take the Google form and answer questions. And we put it around town and we put it around the schools. And for the Google form, we had 103 responses, and 55% of people said that affordable housing doesn't affect them, and 44% says that it does. And then about 91% said that affordable housing in Winchester is not affordable. And a few of the responses that we got from Winchester residents are people are saying that it's very expensive and that when they tried moving here, they weren't able to buy a house, and instead they had to rent a house. And a lot of people, there was a lot of like mentioning about families and how people could not move here in the beginning. And I think Carson, can you unmute Carson because he also wants to say a slide?
Carson, you should be able to unmute yourself.
All right, thank you. I'm Carson Sarpong. So one of the main challenges or problems we've seen is with affordable housing, a lack of diversity and growth in Winchester compared to other towns in Boston. So as you see the census reports, Winchester compared to Boston has a great lack of diversity. And one of the things you can point to this is because of affordable housing. And an increase of diversity is an increase of perspectives and understandings within our community. We all know how to we all have access to our education systems in Winchester, right? Everyone knows one of the main reasons to live in Winchester is our education system. And I can say from personal experience, it's pretty good. But like, why should we limit it to just mostly the Caucasian upper class households? When we limit education to people, we limit education to people in the lower class and mostly people of color when houses are not affordable in Winchester. Winchester High School only has 29 students who identify as African American, and 8 of those who are part of the ABC program do not currently live in Winchester. If we want to allow more race and backgrounds to attend our schools, we will be allowing diversity of not just our census reports, but of our communities and town perspectives. So I believe it's very important for us to allow housing to be affordable, and this should be one of Winchester's top priorities, because diversity within our community is very lacking. This impacts a lot. Thank you. And then the next slide. Lastly, questions. So we have some questions for everyone on the board. Why is housing board in towns relatively cheaper than Winchester in housing? So like when you look at other towns like Woburn, their housing is relatively cheaper than ours. So we're just wondering why. How flexible is the town in increasing affordable housing at the moment? What about in the future? What are some of the projects the community can participate to advocate the issues? So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That was really great. I appreciate all of your work on this. I know that you've been working really hard on it for the last, I mean, it must be a few months now, if I recall correctly. If you don't mind, can you leave that last slide up? I would like to have members of the board speak up and help answer some of your questions, maybe give some other feedback or just some general comments to you about the presentation and some of the stuff that you talked about. So if you could put that last slide back up, that would be great. And any member of the board, please just jump in.
So I'll start with just commending you for taking civic participation as a elective course at the high school, and I'm so happy that you chose increasing affordable housing in Winchester as your topic, or maybe it was assigned. I'm not sure about that, but you've done a really great job of grounding yourself in the issues, and your questions are very on point. I think the answers to these questions, I don't know if other board members want to go through them too, but I'm just going to say, I think the reason that Winchester's housing is more expensive than bordering towns has to do with the quality of the school system. But I think that's a really pat answer, because I think that how quality in a school system is measured is probably a topic for considerable discussion. But I know that Winchester values education deeply, and therefore the students who come out of our school system really benefit from a commitment, a culture of commitment to learning. And I don't know, but I think that translates into more expensive houses, but I don't know that. I think the town is very flexible about increasing affordable housing. I think you all sat in on the portion of this meeting where Taylor gave an update on, and in I Ching, and yeah, on the town's work to update the housing production plan, which is a statutory requirement from the Commonwealth, that every town, I think it's every town, have one. And it has to be updated periodically, and we're doing that now. So one of the ways that as Winchester residents, you can be civically engaged is to find out more about how the housing production plan is coming along and being created and the issues it's tackling. I don't know about the last two bullets. That was kind of what I asked during the housing production plan portion of this meeting. So that's all I have.
So I'd like to chime in. I thank you all four of you for an excellent presentation. And just to repeat what Sally said, I think you've hit upon some really important questions here. I think one of the things that Winchester has is, or what it doesn't have, is it doesn't produce a lot of new housing units. And so we have a very static development scenario where we have essentially created a map, essentially since the 40s and 50s, as to where new houses should go. We've created lot sizes, which are quite large in some areas, and those have all been developed. So we essentially have no new land on which to put houses. So once you have that limited stock, and as Sally pointed out, a school system which a lot of what people want to get into, you essentially have a demand that's far outstrips supply, and so market forces have pushed the prices up. In my opinion, one of the fundamental reasons the housing prices in Winchester are so high is because we just can't build more of it on most of the town. And as you pointed out, by far the majority of the town is single family housing. And we have single family housing on 20,000 square foot lots, which are fairly large. So that really reduces the land area you can put new houses on. Is the flexibility the town has. I think, as Sally pointed out, the town is extremely interested in increasing the level of affordability, but there are a few tools that we have. Or I should say, there are a few tools we have. There's not a lot of public property that the town could say have people build affordable housing on. We have the Waterfield lot downtown, which is the town owns the land and is working with the developer to put in 40 affordable units there. The only other lever we've got is to try to incentivize developers to put in affordable units, but that means they have to be able to build enough market rate units to make up for the losses they're going to take on the affordable units, which can be quite large. And I think, as you pointed out in your presentation, the ability, the amount of money the government is providing to subsidize that is quite limited. So the only other way we can do this is really to rezone the town and to create more districts where we can put multifamily housing. And that is a political issue more than a policy issue, because a lot of people are very comfortable with the zoning we have. They came to town expecting that their neighborhood would look a certain way. There would be a certain density of housing, a certain amount of green space. And if you were to go into most neighborhoods in town and say, we would like to double or triple the density of units, I think you would see a bit of a backlash. So that's a political issue more than a policy issue. And some of the projects that you can get involved with, the town has a housing coalition that's it's an offshoot of the Network for Social Justice. And there are a number of people who are on this video today who are from there. And I think they're a great place you can reach out to and talk and see what they're doing. And I think that pressure from the residents on the elected officials is really key in order to get things moving. We have people like the planning board or the select board who are elected But really the voice as to what would change, say, for instance, in the zoning, that's town meeting members who have to approve those. And educating town meeting members about your concerns, I think would go a long way, because then they would understand that this is an important issue for residents and it would move them forward. So those are my 2 cents on that. And again, I really want to thank you for your presentation. It was really to the point. Anyone else from the planning board, please?
Yeah, I would love to commend you guys. You did an amazing job with this presentation. You've brought up some very thoughtful questions and you've raised some issues that I think the planning board takes really seriously. I think Sally, mentioned, and you represent the schools as such a strong strength for this town, and Diab mentioned the fact that people move here not just for the schools, but because there's some space. We look at the balance between buildings and greenery. You called out some really, we constantly compare ourselves on the planning board to sort of Lexington and these towns with much bigger populations. And you mentioned towns that are much more similar in population size, Medford and Stoneham. And I think those are really good thought exercises in figuring out what would our town look like if we achieved the same density, and what would we have to, what's the give and take of getting to more affordable housing. A number that I always thought was interesting here is the cost that it takes, and I've forgotten the number, and maybe someone else can help with it, but the cost it takes to educate each student per year. So a number that's interesting to look at is, what does the Winchester education cost per child, and how many kids are in average in each house, and that money is coming from mostly from the property taxes. And so sort of thinking about that number, is the tax rate where it should be. Those sorts of numbers are kind of interesting to dig into when you're really trying to solve sort of like, how do we make sure as we increase density and increase the diversity of our population, that we're continuing to provide the same level of excellence to our students and to our community. And you're asking what the most important thing you can do. And Diab mentioned educating your town meeting members, and I want to take it a step farther. I think you only have to be 18 to run for town meeting. Is that right? Do you have to be older than 18? Does anyone know the minimum age? Some of you could run as seniors. Some of you will turn, I know my daughter's a sophomore now, and she will turn 18 in October. She'd rather die than run for office in town. But think about that. You can get engaged in local government fairly early. And if you can't sort of run, or if you missed an election cycle, or you're going away to college or whatever, you could help people vote and sort of get that local engagement with local government. We think about the national elections so much, but the local elections, very few voices have a lot of sway in this town. And the more people we get engaged, not only through presentations like this, but through your ongoing contact with the open seats and the uncontested positions that we have in town, the more you'll see these changes actually take place. So I look forward to serving with you in the future, and thanks for this work.
Yeah, I thought it was a great job. Very, very, very to the point, and I enjoyed it. It's a very good presentation.
I want to follow up Carrie's point. That she took my point too. I'd say run for government, run for office, vote for certain, be as engaged as you are. And I know this topic especially can get pretty personal. I've known loved ones, friends, families who can't afford to live close by, and it really tears up families and communities, and it's very tough. I think you nailed it on the point with why Winchester might be more costly than others, and it is zoning, and it comes from a long line of laws and people deciding about land size and dimensions and how to use it. And all those things are malleable, but they change at a slow pace, but it takes a lot of participation. And I commend you all for really getting engaged in a very tough topic, but I think very super important. 30 years ago, it took only about 3 times the median income to purchase a home. Now it's 9 times. So it's getting increasingly difficult for your generation, future generations to purchase and to get into communities. And it's an issue that's difficult, but changeable. And I think, keep learning, keep getting engaged. It's worth fighting for, I think. So, thank you.
So do you folks have any questions for us other than the ones you posted?
Thank you for your responses. And Taylor, I was wondering if you could unmute Grady so that he can ask some questions.
Yeah. One sec.
Can you unmute
Yep.
Grady?
Yep, Grady, go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hi, thank you for all your answers. They were really helpful. Yeah, that sounds great for definitely a few years from running for office, if any of us would do that. But yeah, thank you for your answers. It's really helpful for us. And I think us and a lot of members of our community really care about this issue. And we'd like to say thank you for letting us present, and also thanks for your answers. But if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them. But I don't really have any more besides of what we've posted already.
Okay, any questions for the presenters from the board?
I wonder if they're aware of the MBTA 3A community. So that's the next thing that we've been working really hard on, and that's coming up in spring. So if you can sort of get caught up on what the town is doing for that, it helps sort of the middle housing market rate stuff, but it does increase, hopefully increase the number of housing units in town. That would make it easier for us to continue to build for folks, more folks, and get engaged and talk to your town and meeting members. I think that would be very helpful and one way to get engaged soon.
Okay. If you folks have any other questions, you can always talk to Taylor, and I'm more than happy to speak with you. And please let us continue this conversation, not necessarily only at planning board meetings, but in person. I'm really impressed by your initiative, and I think it bodes well for this town. Taylor, are you still around? I've lost sight of you.
Yep. Yep, I'm here. Sorry, I was just eating, but I'm here.
No. No, I mean, you disappeared from my screen. You're there. I see now your little squares up there in our Hollywood squares. Okay, so thank you again. And I think we are going to move on to the MBTA 3A portion of our meeting this evening. So as a Taylor, do you want to sort of give an update on what's happened over the last couple of weeks?
So the last time that we met, the last time the ZREC met was maybe December 17th. I don't actually remember the exact date. It was before the holiday. And since then, members of the ZREC have filled out a survey based off of their preferences for locations of the overlay. Every member of the board should have. You should also be able to check your email and see the most updated information. I just sent that over. And for any member of the public who wants to see more information, this will all become publicly available in the morning on the website. You can also reach out to me or the planning board if you want any more granular detail. Planning board at winchester.us. So what we have today is we'll have a summary of all the responses, and then you'll also have the metadata, let's just call it, which is the Excel spreadsheet, which I understand isn't the nicest thing to look at, but I tried to make it as nice as possible in the document, the Word document as well, where you can see everything outside of Excel. So I have a presentation for everyone. I would appreciate the opportunity to go through the whole presentation before we start talking about everything, just so that you can understand what we will be talking about and what the content is. And then we can go, as you all on the board decide, to go district by district and decide which ones to talk about. This might be a lengthy conversation, but it will be a good conversation. So just give me 1 second. I need to grab my water.
I just want to add, for the benefit of the high school students,
fill that up, please?
the acronym ZRAC
Fill that up.
stands for the
Fill that
Zoning
up and
Review Advisory Committee, which is a committee that the planning board convened of residents to participate in the process of identifying those locations in town where we would create overlay districts to comply with the new MBTA communities housing law, which you can learn all about because it's deep and lots to learn.
Thank you for letting us know.
Okay. I would like to go through this rather quickly, at least initially, and then we can go into it as much detail as you want. Some background on MBTA 3A. For the public's knowledge, if this is your first time seeing it, MBTA 3A, Multifamily Communities Act, otherwise known as Section 3A, was enacted in January 2021. And it requires that MBTA community shall have at least one zoning district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing, 3 units or more, be permitted as of right and meets the criteria set forth in statute. You should note that communities that do not comply will become ineligible for housing infrastructure and capital project funding, state funding. This is not a mandate to create new housing. It is only a mandate to create new zoning. It's not a mandate to create affordable housing. It is a mandate to create housing density near transit. It is not a mandate to remove the building approval process. It is only a mandate to make the process less subjective. The specific requirements for us here in Winchester are a minimum density of 50. Okay. The recording stopped and started again. Hopefully that's fine. So the requirements here in Winchester: minimum density of 15 dwelling units per acre, a minimum land area of 37 acres. Please remember 37 acres. We'll be talking about 37 acres a lot today. That's a minimum of 37 acres. Minimum unit capacity of 1,220 dwelling units. A minimum 50% of that unit capacity has to be within a half-mile radius of transit. A minimum 50% of that land area has to be within a half-mile of transit. So what is the planning board doing tonight? What are we voting on tonight? Planning board will only be voting to finalize which districts make up the minimum required land area. We're talking about land area tonight. We're not going to be talking about or voting on compliance metrics like the density and the capacity of each district or the land area. We're not going to be talking about dimensional requirements, design guidelines, or use tables. We're only going to be talking about which districts are we selecting to make up our minimum required land area. Based off of our initial study, community feedback, and ZRAC advice, a total of 8 districts have been proposed. Of those 8 districts, the board needs to make sure that the land area of those reaches a minimum of 37 acres, 50% of that land being within transit area. These districts are known as the Central Business District, GBD2, GBD3, Parkview, North Wedge Pond, St. Mary's, Ginn Road, and Mahoney's Bunnell. We'll go into each one in more detail. As a data sense, here is the all 8 district options and their excuse me, and their district area. You'll see some districts like CBD and GBD3 have a minimum and maximum land area. That means that the board will be deciding how much area they want in that district. So we start with the CBD. The CBD in total, if all land area in the CBD is used, it would reach 43.4 acres. But the CBD does also have a minimum area because of its requirement of 50% within the transit area of 12.6. We've studied 3 options. Option 1 being the entire area of the CBD. That's 43.4 acres. Option 2 being 24.8 acres. This does include the parcel which currently has the Congressional Church on it in 15 Dick Street, but it excludes ground floor retail along Main Street, Thompson, and Mount Vernon. It also excludes several buildings that are historically significant along Church Street and Main Street. The third option is 14.6 total acres. It excludes 90% of all historically significant buildings in the CBD. We have 70 of them. And it excludes all ground floor retail that is not located on Main Street. In total, you'll see the 3 options for the CBD: 43.4 acres, 24.8 acres, and 14.6 acres. Please note at the bottom here that these options do not have to be voted on in their entirety. We can vote, we can decide to remove certain parcels or certain sections, but we have to reach a minimum of 12.6 acres. Based off of ZREC feedback, 50% of the ZREC members support option number 2. 20% support option number 3, and 10% support option number 1. The none of the above and the purple CBD historic and retail that excludes museum core are actually asking for the same thing. So that's a 20% would like to see option number 3, but with the removal of museum district. When we come back around for more detail, I'll go into that more specifically. GBD2, we have a total of 13.2 acres. 100% of this is within the transit area. 9 of 10 ZREC members have expressed their interest in including this in the overlay. GBD3 is split into 4 subzones. You can see the subzones: the purple, 5.9 acres, east, blue, 3.2 acres, red, 2.4 acres, green, 3.9 acres. Based off of ZREC feedback, 100% of ZREC members support including the purple section in the overlay. 70% the blue section, 80% the red section, and 50% the green section. Additional options are Parkview and North Wedge Pond. 9 of these are 8.7 acres and 6.1 acres respectively. 9 out of 10 ZREC members have expressed their interest in including Parkview. 8 out of 10 ZREC members have expressed interest in including North Wedge Pond. Additional options that are that are outside of the original study area and not within the continuous plane: St. Mary's, which is for St. Mary, the location that's currently occupied by St. Mary's Church. 6.2 acres. It's within the half-mile radius. 4 of 10 members of the ZREC have expressed interest in including that. Vien Road, 12.9 acres. It is within the half-mile radius, and 6 of 10 members of the ZREC have expressed interest in or support for including that. In Mahoney's and Bunnell, 41.9 acres. It is not within the half-mile radius. and 1 of 10 members of the ZRAC have expressed interest. Looking into each one specifically, and then we'll wrap around and open it up for discussion. So St. Mary's, 6.2 total acres. We can't use just the St. Mary's property. We have to use some of the surrounding properties in order to make it at least 5 acres. It is within a half-mile radius, and again, 4 of 10 members have support this. Ginn Road is 12.9 acres. It actually does not. Sorry, it does not have to include surrounding properties. This is a standalone. District that does fit in 6 out of 10. Approve it. And then Mahoney's and Bunnell, this is not within the half-mile radius. It's a very large parcel, 41.6. But something that's really interesting about the feedback is that many members of the ZRAC, although only 2 of 10, I believe that should actually be 1 of 10, support this. You should read the comments, because a lot of people do support affordable housing here or higher density. They just don't support it for the overlay. So it's really interesting to see that support, and something that we can think about long term if we do not decide to add this to the overlay. The only additional option that was asked to be considered was McDonald Field on Hill Street. We cannot include this in our overlay as town-owned land. Let's see, is this last one? So again, this last slide here, and it's a wrap up of each one. Again, something that's very important to remember is that we need to reach 37 acres. We can select any parcel or any district here as long as they all combine up to 37 acres. We're not talking about unit density, dimensions, or any of the other requirement. We're just talking about land use. So let's start from which one do we want to start with? It's my assumption that the CBD is going to be the longest one. I don't know if that means that's the one we start with, or I'd like to hear feedback from you all for that.
I think it's a good starting point.
Yeah,
Okay.
we probably should. It's gonna be the longest.
I wonder though, Taylor, if we could look at the last slide for the 8 districts, if it might be helpful for us, there might be some ones that are simpler than others. And if we could maybe take out the ones that might not make it in a district for one reason or another, that we have then a leftover district that we can then hold, and then between now and April, this deliberation can continue, but at least we have enough square area where we eliminate some of these things right now, and start to define it from that point. Because if we get to CBD, I think we get too busy in the weeds, and we can't see it anymore. I think that will take us to the end of this meeting.
I just want to have a couple of comments. One is that we can't wait until April. We really have to get this done by
No, I
the
didn't
end
mean
of.
that, but
Okay, yeah, just we
I know.
have to get it done by the end of February at the
I know.
latest. So
But
yeah,
to sort of get the most work done in the next 20, 30 minutes, I
Yeah.
think.
I agree. I think there are a couple that are easy to get rid of.
So are we then open to getting these done, and then if we don't finish, we resume it at a follow-up meeting?
We're going to have to, and we're probably going to have a meeting next week, because I think this is this decision. We need to make this decision to understand what sort of density we will need on each of these districts. So this is the key decision to move forward on. But I think that we can get rid of a number of these very quickly. So
My vote is to talk about Mahoney's and Bunnell first.
I would agree with that. Any other comments?
I would agree with that.
So
Yeah, I
The,
think we can get rid of this one. I don't think that it creates more problems than it solves. It's not within the half mile radius.
yeah, and I agree, and I think one of the key points is that if we use this, and it increases the total amount of acreage we're going to put in, then we have to increase the amount of acreage within the half mile, because that always has to be 50% of the total.
Right.
So I think this, and the ZRAC made some very good comments about using the ability to on future zoning on these properties in order to steer development. Whereas if we create these as part of the MBTA 3A overlay district, there really isn't any sort of leverage that we can in order to, if we wanted to move this development in certain directions, to, for instance, retain commercial or something like that. So there were a number of people who made that comment. I thought that was really helpful.
So by procedurally, would we just do a straw poll vote, or do we vote to not include?
Let us vote to decide on this property once and for all. So is there a motion to remove the Mahoney's Benel lots from our consideration?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so roll call vote, please. Nick,
Aye.
I Ching,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
I say aye as well. Thank you. So Taylor, if we can go back to that screen, the summary one.
Taylor, can I ask a question about this screen before we go any farther?
Yep.
So the 37 acres is the minimum land area that we need to have all the overlay districts add up to?
Yes.
That is correct. And half of it has to be within the half mile radius.
So the half mile radius it is the circle that we're all familiar with. I'm just confused about the CBD and GBD2 and Ginn Road. Well, because those are all within the half mile radius, right? Oh, and so is North Wedge Pond.
So is
That's
St.
correct.
Mary's.
So
Yep.
if half of 37 acres is what,
About 18.
yeah, I should know that, 18 and a half. So that 18 and a half can be made up of any of the remaining 7 or that are yeses. So district, the GBD3 and Parkview can't be part of the
That's correct.
but CBD, GBD2, North Wedge Pond, St. Mary's, and Ginn Road could in aggregate provide half of the minimum requirement.
That is correct.
That is correct. And I know that I've stated twice now that what we're doing is just focusing on land, on land numbers.
Yeah.
However, we do have to consider the ultimate goal of what density is. So yes, technically we can just put those 18.5 in the CBD, but we would need huge density to do that, right? So we need to consider, although we're trying to reach that 37, we do still need to, at least in the back of our mind, consider what the ideal density is. We don't need to come up with the exact number, but we need to at least be aware of the of density as we make these decisions.
So clarifying question on Parkview. Parkview is already a high density multifamily property. And it's large enough to be its own district, which is because it has to be a minimum of 5 acres. So would we say an easy yes would be Parkview? Or would we say, let's hold off on that question because we want to see what else we can do?
I think we'd want to include it. I mean, in any case.
It's an easy one for me.
Yeah.
That's an easy one for me.
For me, it's questionable because I feel like Parkview is a buffer for us, which is nice in that we can include it even though it's not within half mile. However, the likelihood of it changing is very slim. And this MBTA 3A law is to encourage towns to have an opportunity to change zoning in a way that actually has some effect on a very, very dire situation of creating more housing. And so Parkview to me seems like an easy A, or I don't know, whatever you do to sort of buffer up, you know, something to pass. So if we include it, I think that's good, but I do want to note that it is it's not likely to change. It doesn't impact our residents. It doesn't impact anybody in the ways that would be helpful to building housing.
Keeping it out of an overlay, similar to what we did with the Mahoney's and Bunnell land, would be keeping flexibility for the town if the whole condominium association in aggregate decided to change the building and land and everything.
Yeah, I suppose they could, as a condo association, decide to use part of their parking to build more or something like that.
Right.
I,
And so
you know, I think that I agree, I Ching, that including Parkview is not really in the spirit of MBTA 3A, but it is in the letter. And it does provide us, you know, one of the things we always struggled with, excuse me, was getting enough land area. We never had a problem with density in units. And so Parkview allowed us to get enough land area. And, you know, if we're going to look at the spirit of MBTA, then, you know, our CBD already has, we're not really going to add any new units in the CBD because it's already at that density.
zoned for.
So I don't, you know, it does seem like you're just playing the shell game by adding Parkview.
Yeah.
So
I think if we do include it, my point is that I would hope that we would include some districts that actually become effective at encouraging growth and unit building.
But I think
why
I
don't-
think the Parkview allows us, you know, you mentioned sort of like keep an eye on the 10-year plan and the 20-year plan and make sure that we can continue to add units. I think adding Parkview, you know, we're putting so much in the 3A basket, and I think adding Parkview to this particular project gives us the flexibility to keep adding things in a higher quality sort of. We may not pack as much density into as little space, but maybe our next project is that, you know, we do rezone, you know, Mahoney's Bunnell, and we do sort of keep expanding through the town, but it doesn't put as much pressure on this particular project to put density in as small a space. I think it's, for me, it's a no-brainer to have that flexibility.
Right. Okay.
Which means
so
you're saying
Parkview,
it's a no-brainer to not include it?
To include Parkview for
To
me.
include it, okay, all right.
so Parkview is at the high end of densities. I think it's around, it's either 36 or 43, depending upon which land area you use. So and one of the things that came out of the first technical report from Goldson et al. Was that if you were to raise Parkview and rebuild it, you would never get to the same density you have now without using up a lot more land, just because the economics of building something that tall is no longer really feasible. So what you would end up doing is, if we took Parkview down and decided, you know, to add more units than there are now, then you would be covering much more land area. Or actually putting the same amount of units. Let me backtrack.
Right.
So the development potential of Parkview, I think, is nil. I don't think it'll ever change because you have too many owners. And even if you did tear it down and put something new there, you would probably not have as many units as you do now, just because of economics, unless you went really big and you went like a 40B, because then you would get money from the state.
No,
So
but similar to the development across from Mahoney's, not the new one, but the older one, the condo association wants to sell a portion of their land to build, right?
Right.
I think I can see Parkview doing the similar thing, but the MBTA 3A does nothing for them to do that. Actually, they would still have to come before the town in order to do that if we put in an overlay, right? Because
yes,
they're at the max capacity. So I
And
mean, I'm okay. I can stop this conversation and say, yes, let's include Parkview. But I just want to note that it's like the spirit of the law, Dia. Like I would really like to look forward to adding districts that actually would help with creating more units.
so yeah, so this is Parkview is kind of like the Hall of Fame entry with a little star next to it, in the sense that, you know, let's not use it as an excuse not to do something better elsewhere.
Right. So I would make a
So-
motion to include Parkview in the overlay district. That would.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, let's do a vote on that. Nick,
Aye.
I Ching,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
and I say aye as well.
Great.
Do we want to? So I think the North Wedge Pond one is also an easy one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it gives us a nice land area.
And, you know, we could, something, you know, Taylor mentioned this to me today, and I thank you for thinking that, is that we could, it actually has a fairly low unit density there. So one of the things we could think about is raising the density, but we're not talking about density today. I just want to shout out to Taylor for that. So we have two existing multifamily housing projects on there. One is run by the Winchester Housing Association. The other is a private condominium, I believe. Both of them are put in there by special permits because this is ordinarily an RG, and they are definitely more dense than an RG. So is discussion or a motion?
So just following on what you just said, if we make this an overlay district, I mean, the special permit sort of nullified the underlying RG, right?
Yes.
So the underlying zoning doesn't exist anymore.
Well, let me withdraw that. I think the special permit applies to these structures. We need to
I
get,
see. And if we
before I
make it,
step on, before my foot goes any further into my mouth, I'm going to say, why don't we talk to Jay, our town council, and make sure that if you have a question we should have Jay answer that.
right. I mean, but I think that, and the other thing is that the Winchester Housing Authority owns the northeastern portion of those houses. Is that right? To the right in this diagram, purple diagram. And I thought you said that town-owned land can't be included.
So this is, I know that the Beverly, what is
Mesa
Beverly's
Zent.
last?
Mesa Zent.
Mesa Zent. She went and worked with the MHP on this, and
Okay.
they determined that it was possible to use it, which is why it made it into the technical report.
Great.
So,
Okay.
so as far as I know, this is still available to us.
Well, and I think it's an important thing because it's inside the half-mile district, and it takes 6.1 acres of pressure off of the other options within the half-mile radius.
Right.
It adds that amount to our progress towards our goal.
So,
just so that we can continue to consider the opinions of the ZRAC and of the public. Only two individuals noted that they do not support this. One said, "I do not support this," but the other mentioned that they were concerned about the location near the pond. So, thinking about the environmental concerns of likely the environmental concerns of larger scale development. But all other members of the ZRAC supported it.
I remember one ZRAC member saying that they do support it, but not as fervently as another, and I can't remember the reason why. I think it was Tommy. and not with as much enthusiasm, because he believes that the large developments that could go in place of the housing complex that is there could disrupt the character of the neighborhood. But I believe that this area could be added if other regions are rejected. It's not my first choice, but I think I would be supportive of it being overlaid. People were very opposed to the inclusion of other spaces. So
Well,
it's kind of like a buffer.
so that said, would it be appropriate for us to look at the other yeses before we determine?
I think
this
most of the
one?
other yeses were fairly clear. I think that was the only one who sort of qualified their yes.
So one of the things that we can look at, and I don't know that any of these, I think the actual density on these sites, I know we're not supposed to talk about density, but I think the density is actually pretty close or maybe already above our 15 per unit acre. You can please correct me if I'm wrong, Taylor. So I don't think that we would be looking at any significant increase. If these were to be redeveloped, I don't think
It
they
is
would be.
not. It's actually only 6.3 dwelling units per acre.
Wow. Then they're very concentrated.
I think there're just
So-
not many units there.
I thought there were like 30 or so.
Well, so I think the one sort of opposing voice on the ZRAC raises an interesting point, which is that if these two parcels which comprise this overlay district, if either one or both of them got redeveloped, first of all, we wouldn't want it to disrupt the character of the neighborhood. And secondly, we wouldn't want it to have the development have an adverse effect on the ecology and health of the pond. So those two things being said, are you allowed to take those concerns into consideration in an MBTA 3A overlay district?
Yes. You can certainly, as long as you don't put in rules which really prevent the construction of housing, if it's in an environmentally sensitive land, I think you can say you need to take special care. Or again, if the concern is the impact on the neighborhood there, you could, I mean, there are already 2-story buildings there now. So moving them to 2.5 stories, and they do spread over a certain amount of land. I don't think MBTA prevents us from putting in design requirements which would maintain that sort of feel, but still allow.
Right.
Yeah.
So the likelihood of it being redeveloped is low, and I would qualify my yes as to include it as, don't let that be an excuse to have us do more bold things elsewhere where it would have some impact on building.
Yes, I agree with you completely, I Ching. I think this falls into the Parkview column.
Yeah. So I would make a motion to include this in the overlay district, North Wedge Pond district.
I'll second that.
Okay, why don't we have a roll call vote then, please? Sally?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
I Ching?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
And I say aye as well. So I think we're running out of easy ones. I think that the two, I think that Ginn Road and St. Mary's are two interesting ones because they, particularly Ginn Road is one, I think, I Ching, where this would be a substantive change.
Right.
Moving towards a recognition that we are going to actually be adding units in areas which are not traditionally thought of being multifamily. So what was the, Taylor, can you give us the feedback from the ZRAC on Ginn Road? It actually, from my sitting in on the ZRAC meetings, I was actually surprised on how little support Ginn Road has.
But in the Excel spreadsheet, it seems to have quite a lot, right? Six
So
out of 10.
it is it is a majority. Yep, it is a majority. It is 6 out of 10. ZREC members support.
Could you scroll to that page in
Yeah,
your,
I'm actually just going to reshare.
okay, because for some reason I thought it was 4 out of 10, but my memory is failing me.
Oh, I just saw it.
Yeah, I think it's this one here.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much detail we want to go into each one, because we have all seen it on the but again, yes, it is a majority. I would say, to summarize it, there is an interest to a few people have talked about the history of Ginn Road and what its original intention was by its developers. Its location near, I mean, it's within half a mile of 2 transit stations, and the opportunity to use it as a place to add more density in areas that are not centralized to the CBD. Oh, and the third and the fourth being how this neighborhood has been radically changing from the demolition of more modest single family ranch style homes to 5,000 plus square foot large homes, and we could use that as an opportunity to increase housing instead of increase house size.
Right. I think there was some history going way back when that this land was intended to be for modest homes, and that history has essentially been overturned, or that projected view has been overturned recently. I think what you're seeing here in the number 4, which I think is key, is that it says the opportunities to develop a significant number of the remaining parcels in the foreseeable future are limited. And so my concern is that putting an overlay district on the Ginn Road area is really not going to significantly change development there.
But
I think
somebody from ZRAC mentioned also that these homes that have been created, the 5,000 square foot homes, then have the opportunity to convert to more units than if some owner decides to. So there is an additional opportunity to go to develop to the limits of the setbacks in the height, and then be able to divide them up into more manageable units. So these big buildings can be, again, rethought if they have the opportunity to do so. And there are about 10 or so properties that have not gone through this radical change in the last 5-10 years. So, if there are multiple units within those 10 units, that's a creation of quite a number of units that might be possible.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's kind of an exciting option that maybe some of these lots that are being redeveloped could be multifamily, which we don't have a lot. We don't have a lot of that opportunity in Winchester. I don't think I'm ready to eliminate this one just yet.
I think it's a really interesting inclusion. It wasn't one that came to mind when we were first thinking about it, but I try to think from the perspective of who would move in there, and then also our sort of planning for that. And it's it'd be a nice neighborhood to have affordable housing in. The commute would be dreamy. It's right next to Ginfield. I mean, it'd be a really nice place to live. We would have to think of it a little differently. Like, this could not be a place with a 0 minimum parking spot, because they're near the train. Like, That's great if you're going to North Station, but you can only see Madonna so many times before you have to buy groceries. And so these would be units that we'd have to probably think about a little differently, but or they would need spots at Wedgemere. But I think it's nice, and I think it's true if we're gonna, if the lot is gonna be occupied by that much building, it would be nice for either the owners or whoever to have the flexibility to develop it into, maybe we end up encouraging multi-generational housing where there's 2 or 3 or 4 units on one property that are, within a family or something. It's
Well,
interesting.
we'd have to have a minimum of 3.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that would be required to count towards to the MBTA. They would have to have at least 3 units on each lot.
So I have a question about the town meeting vote. Are we going to ask town meeting to vote on the package of overlay districts as the planning board has so laboriously and carefully crafted it? Or are we giving them the choice like we're doing tonight of thumbs up, thumbs down on individual districts? It's the former.
I don't think we can do that because we would not be guaranteed that we would end up with a selection which meets the minimum
Right.
criteria from the
That's what I was
state.
saying about laboriously crafted.
Mhm.
So this question about whether people at town meeting would not understand why we included GIN, and the very last sentence, it's an important enough decision that I, the writer of this comment number 7, think it's worthy of educating town meters on the topic and putting it before them for consideration. So we have to include this. If we include this, we have to include it mindful that there's specific education, rationale education that goes on with each one of these districts. And we can do that. We just have to be aware.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that we have the other districts like North Wedge Pond and Parkview allows us to consider keeping this in and then determining how the community is responding so that we'll still have the possibility of meeting our minimum requirements if we determine that politically it's not going to make it.
Yeah.
That's sort of
Well, also, are we specifying density by each district and such that the average of the density over all districts is the target?
we're always going for the average over all of the districts.
Okay.
I think when we start talking about density, I think we should also be mindful of the context of where that density is going to happen.
Right.
So that, that's another delicate question. But luckily, as Taylor has given us the rules tonight, we're not talking about density.
No, we're not. That's right. And what are the lot sizes on Gin Road? Is it 65 or
Minimum 10,000.
10? Okay. Okay. Well,
I agree with you, Sally. I think that there needs to be a huge educational piece. Even when we talk, when Carrie mentioned affordable housing, I think that people start to think in capital A affordable, but we're talking about market rate housing, right? Things that are not going to be, for better or worse, when people think about Section 8 vouchers or whatever. I think it's going to be pretty pricey condos, probably, right?
yeah.
And also, we can talk about design review and all the drainage reviews and site plan review that happen when these things happen. They don't just come up. I think people are nervous about that, about it just popping up.
Because you could have a 3 or 4 family house
Yeah.
backing up to a 1 family house.
But this would be a huge sort of intro to when people talk to us constantly about why our houses are getting so large and so expensive, and why can't we keep the naturally affordable housing that exists. But this is a creation of naturally affordable housing, in that they are smaller size. They're for downsizers. They're for people starting their family units. Things that we're missing.
So it would be a continuation of Mr. Ginn's vision to include this as an MBTA 3A overlay district.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm getting a sort of a consensus from the board that they are ready to make a decision as to inclusion of this property. Is that correct?
We just keep adding acres, right? We just do sort of a straight addition here until we get to 37.
Pretty much. And then we do have to make sure half of it's within a half mile.
But everything except for Parkview that we're talking about is within a half mile, am I right?
So far,
Correct.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
if we include this 12, are we not
12.9.
kind of there?
Yeah. Well, so what I wrote down was Wedge Pond is 6.1 and Ginn is 12.9. So that right there is 19. Is that correct?
Right. So let's,
Wait, Parkview,
Okay.
wait,
But I'm not counting, I'm not counting the Parkview because it's not in the half mile.
so
but it's in
I
total
just,
acreage. It's just
Right,
not, so
yeah.
then the counterbalance to that has to be in the half, right? So we need 18.5 in the half mile.
right, but
37
let's, I am more concerned about whether Ginn Road will be acceptable to the community than I am about some other parcels. So I would not like to count our chickens just yet.
All right, well, let's
Right, I agree about
put that
counting the
on
chickens.
hold.
I think, but it would be nice to have. I mean,
So
I
I
guess
think that number is really important to know as we make our decisions though, because if we're erring
Right.
on the conservative side, it'll be easier to pass to the town if it's the least acreage we can do, you know. And I bristle at saying that's politically more valuable. I think about the people who came to the ZRAC meeting to sort of say like, why is this all on our neighborhood? And they're living off North Main and sort of pointing out that
Right.
it's a lot of pressure on a few neighborhoods.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Carrie. I'm just
Mhm.
playing, very conservative
know.
devil's advocate here because I think that but in any case, it does seem like there's a consensus on the board that Ginn Road should be in play.
Seems
Am I
like it's
correct?
moving
At
that way.
this
Yeah.
point, we should discuss each of them and then we should play with the numbers, because I think the really low hanging fruit. I think the St. Mary's Ginn Road, these are becoming interesting parcels and we want to decide them in some. Personally, that's what I
I
think.
agree, Carrie, that we have to have a contextual conversation about the whole mix.
So should we move on to St. Mary's then?
Yes.
I think yes.
So going back to the map, Taylor, you said that we do need to include something in order to do something.
I
have
am
to-
sure that I said something along the lines of
I
that.
think you
Yeah.
said we need to include adjacent properties to make it enough acres, is that right?
Oh, for St. Mary's, yeah. So the St. Mary property is not like just using their properties, which I think is 3 total properties. Or
Can you
3 total
show where on the
parcels.
map that might be?
So we have this one with this rounded thing. I hope that you can see my cursor.
Yeah.
Yes.
This one here, and this one here.
And those don't
These
equal
3.
5 acres.
That's correct.
And so, and it has to be contiguous, which is why you selected these 1, 2, 3, 4 other parts.
And these have been selected because they're currently used for commercial or multifamily already,
Oh, okay, that's extremely helpful to know.
Is that
or
the
both.
funeral home or next to the funeral home? Which one's excluded there?
I believe that this is next to the funeral home.
That's the.
I believe that these were
funeral
2 single family homes.
Gotcha. So the first property, the first dark gray is the funeral home.
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh, wait, so the funeral home is included in this overlay.
Yes.
And then a cleaners and then some other places.
There was also a church on the corner that got turned into condos, but that's too far down.
Yeah, it's
south.
not, yeah, we can't, it's not included.
And that little dog leg of land, that's a driveway access that's deeded.
Yeah, it's some sort of something, but yeah, it's that parcel. I don't
Yeah.
know how they got that.
So
Yeah.
maybe it's an easement, an old easement.
I will say that there is opportunity to, I mean, if we're talking about St. Mary's, there is opportunity to add additional land here. But I don't mean to say but, it's there is an opportunity to add additional land. We are just including single family homes and some other
Can you
parcels.
provide some of the context for that statement? What other lands are you talking about?
Just adjacent lands. So here, this land, these 6 houses here to the west, these are all either single family. I believe maybe 1 or 2 of them may be multifamily, but it's currently zoned single family. Same with these parcels up here to the north. I just want to point out that this wasn't arbitrarily selected. This was just selected based off of trying to reach the minimum of 5 acres, and in doing so, it went over to 6.2.
Right.
Could
And if
could
you
you
don't include that largest lot on the right side that has the long dog leg, that takes it below 5, right?
I don't remember exactly, but that must be the case.
It must be the case, because otherwise you wouldn't have, and then you can't drop out the 2 in the middle because you would lose your contiguity.
Mhm.
Right.
and what part of it is now zoned single family at the moment?
I think
Inside
all of it,
In the gray?
all of it except for the church land.
Oh,
Wait,
But
so the
there are
businesses, the funeral
Isn't
homes,
isn't that just SCI?
Yeah, but you have commercial. I mean, I'm just trying to, you have how many single family lots are
4.
would
Yeah, 4 of the
Let
gray
me
are
bring up a map.
Yeah, that's a good. I think what I heard from Taylor was that those 4 non-funeral home right side of Washington lots are all single family. Is that what you said, Taylor? Zone single family, even if they might be
It's zoned single family.
even if it might
even
be
though they're
multi-
existing, so they're existing non-conforming multifamilies.
That must be the case. Yeah, it's zoned single family.
So this is intriguing because you know, a number of people at the ZRAC meetings alluded to the fact that St. Mary's is going through some difficulties right now, and that this land might be available for development. Currently, it is SCI, and so the way to get it developed right now would be either to go through town meeting and change the zoning, or to do a 40B. So those are, I think the owners of the land will probably try to extract as much money as they can from it. So that's all I'm going to say, is just that's the history of what's possible there. So
Another possibility
multifamily,
would be for the town to purchase it when they do sell it.
I don't know if the town will have enough money to buy that land.
Well, it's a borrowing power, right? Or
Yeah, but yeah, I don't, hopefully we're going to lose, we're going to take a hit of about $1 million some on the Washington Swanton. And so I don't know what.
right, we don't know what we don't know, but that is another possibility.
It is. That is something that maybe we should discuss with the select board, because they would be the ones who would be.
So if we put this in the overlay, then would that option then be closed, and that somebody could just use a smaller lot, say, and just develop without sort of going to market, or allowing the town to sort of consider some of that land. You know what I mean? Like, it's because it's such a, I just don't want to put it in an overlay if that takes away the chance for the town to be able to make a move somehow.
Yeah, this area, it just seems like it's a combination of what feels like historic. I mean, the church seems vulnerable to me, and I guess there's some surrounding historic houses. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm thinking, well, maybe we should keep it in play, just in case we need it. But I'm not ready to sort of dive in and say, yeah, let's include this.
Well, if we do zone this aggregate of lots that Taylor illustrated as part of the overlay district for MBTA 3A, we are saying that this land now has the option anytime in the future. I mean, we're talking 20, 30 years maybe, but maybe 5, who knows, to be developed as multifamily housing within the half mile of the T. And
I mean,
so,
I sort of think of it as it's a nice spot to live. Like it's close to everything. It's walking distance to the schools. It's kind of a great spot. And does that take any pressure off the center business district, which isn't historic adjacent,
Right.
historic? And so, and it's potentially a project that would move forward in closer to 5 to 10 years than 20 to 30 years, which as far as sort of actually getting affordable units built, that might actually be pretty actionable. And it's, it's already it's a relatively high density area. It's not gonna sort of ruffle as many as Ginfield, but it's another interesting parcel. I think it's worth keeping in the numbers game.
and what was the number 10 on Taylor on this aggregate? If you go back to the other slide, the aggregated
6.2, right?
6.2.
6.2, okay.
So here's the zoning map. So the church properties are SCI. Then we have GBD2, GBD1. And then since that still doesn't reach 5, that's why the inclusion of this strange looking parcel was included.
And the little tiny green square
Yeah.
inside. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense, actually.
So I think it's I'm trying to imagine what happens if this doesn't go into multifamily, if we don't include it in 3A, and what's the development potential. And so we had the only other instance I can think of is when the church up on North Main, just right north of Swanton, or actually a little farther up north of Glenview, when they converted they changed it over from a church to a child care center. So they did preserve the rectory as either office buildings or residences. I don't recall. The original church, I don't think was there any longer. And then they converted the school. So, and then when you look at other towns which have reused school buildings or church buildings as housing, so I know there's a couple of places in Waltham where they have transformed churches into housing, and certainly there's a large number of older elementary schools, even within our town, which have been changed to housing.
Mhm.
So the question is, but in order to do so, they would have to come to the town and ask to rezone the district. So that does give the town some leverage, because then the town could say, yeah, well, we'll put this, we'll give you the ability to do that, but you have to maintain, the existing structures because we want to keep them. If
But
we
are you
do it,
allowed to do that in a 3A district?
so that's the other question I'm not quite sure of is what the 3A district doesn't, I don't think it prevents you from putting historical preservation, but it has to be, I think, more uniform. That's something I think we need to get Jay and maybe Emily Innes to talk to us about. But I'm wondering if then the other option is the 40B.
Right.
So what gives the town the best leverage to ensure there's multifamily housing in here? Is it the MBTA 3A? Is it requiring them to come to town meeting to get the SEI transformed into another district, which we would probably have to create from scratch because I don't know that we have something that's small enough. Or is there a fear that they're just going to go to 40B here?
I guess I'm warming up to the idea. I think if it takes pressure off the center business district, I'm thinking about the school as an ideal spot for a development of affordable housing. And just, I guess, just listening to the descriptions of how other sort of church buildings have been used. I'm
Those aren't necessarily affordable housing, Nick.
well, it's naturally occurring. I mean, they're going to be smaller units.
I see. Yeah.
So
Lowercase
there would be places where people could downsize to.
I imagine the units, if they were to transform the church, those units might be pretty pricey because that's an intriguing place to have your residence.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine those would be at a premium.
So architecturally rich with high ceilings, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't put in a 3A district a requirement that they have to keep the buildings that are on the land. Is that true?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I mean, there would be some risk.
I don't know that that's again a question for what sort of historic preservation is allowed, and I think it can't be specific to individual parcels, I don't believe. I mean, you can't I don't think you can spot zone. But again, this is let's ask these questions of the people who know the answers.
Right.
So
yeah, I think at this point we're
So we have St. Mary's at 6.2 as a maybe, and we have Ginn Road at 12.9 as a maybe. And then
What do we have as definite yeses? 8.7 plus.
The yeses was the 8.7 for Parkview, which is not in the half mile, and the 6.1 of Wedge Pond.
Okay, 6.1. Okay.
And so then what we haven't discussed is GBD 2.3 and CBD.
Yeah, I think we're past the end of our meeting time, and if I mean,
yeah,
I don't know that I could be up for a meeting of CBD at this point.
So
let
we
us
do it again on the next Tuesday.
We're going to have to meet again. We don't really have any time because we have a very full. We have the Waterfield is coming up on the 23rd, which will I think we need to take up at least an hour to do a thorough job on that. So I would recommend that we meet again next Tuesday.
So can we take advantage of the 6 days in between to, is there any data that would be helpful for us to add to this consideration? Like
I think
the historic question.
So I'm going to reach out to Emily and town council and really try to nail down what sort of historic protections are possible. And hopefully we can get some sort of a response by then.
Good. I like it.
And then, I think we've done a lot of work here tonight, even if we haven't finished. But I think we do have to be prepared to finish it at our next meeting so that we can start talking about for instance, if we are going to add, say, St. Mary's or Ginn Road, then we need to talk about what's the massing that we would consider, given that we have to have so many units. We have to really get down to nuts and bolts on dimensional stuff. And I think the thing about adding parcels where the underlying zoning doesn't already give us the necessary density is that we are going to have to create new dimensional zoning for those lots.
Right.
And that's something that we don't have to do really for, the CBD or GBD 2-ish.
Right.
Okay. So why don't can we get a consensus from the board? We're going to be meeting again next Tuesday.
Aye.
Yes.
Yeah.
7:15, same time?
Well, would you rather have it at a different time?
No, it's easier to.
Okay.
Okay.
7:15 it is. So with that, could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
Second from I Ching. Okay, roll call vote. Sally.
Aye.
Nick.
Aye.
Everybody is signing out. Everybody's jumping around. I Ching,
But
Aye.
Carrie.
Aye.
Oh, and I say aye as well. Okay, so we are adjourned. Thanks again to everyone who showed up. Thanks to what's your name today? Taylor Herman. It's right on the screen. Thanks to Taylor Herman, our town planner. Thanks to Nancy Polcari. Was Nancy with us this evening? Yes, there she is. Hi, Nancy, our
Ever.
recording secretary. Thanks to everyone who showed up. Thanks to Richard Lee from the Chamber of Commerce. We didn't get to hear from you tonight, Richard, and you're glad we didn't. That's why there's a thumbs up. And Taylor, if you would be so kind as to send these recordings to WinCam so they can upload them to their YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone out there in TV land, and we will see you again in a week.